You ever see a headline that's so shocking you just have to stop and ask yourself, is this even real? Well, a story just like that went viral recently. And let me tell you, the truth behind it is way more complicated than you'd think. Let's unpack this. So, this was the headline that was everywhere, just spreading like wildfire. The claim that in the first 2 weeks of the year, more than 800 people had just vanished in Delhi. It sounded like the city was in the middle of this terrifying crisis, and it was fueling all kinds of fears about a huge crime wave. But just as that story was taking off, a completely different narrative started to pop up. So on one hand, you had people who were genuinely alarmed, and rightfully so. But on the other, you had a lot of skepticism. A bunch of people were saying this was all just a really clever and kind of unsettling marketing stunt for an upcoming movie. A movie about human trafficking, no less. And that connection made the question even more urgent. Was this a real emergency with hundreds of lives on the line? Or was it all just an elaborate fake-out? All right, so to get to the bottom of this, we've really got to peel back the layers of all these viral claims and counterclaims and figure out what's real and what's just noise. So, what did the fact-checkers find out? Well, the story was true. The numbers were absolutely real. According to the Delhi Police's own data, 807 missing person cases were officially registered in just that 2-week period. This was not a stunt. This was a documented reality. Okay, so the headline was true. But, that's really just the beginning of the story. To really understand what's going on, we need to look closer at the numbers. What are they telling us about the situation in Delhi? And how does this all fit into the bigger national picture? Just let this number sink in for a second. 807 cases in 15 days. That averages out to 54 people going missing every single day. That's more than 2 people disappearing every hour, 24/7. And when you dig into who is going missing, a really clear pattern emerges. For the past 5 years, about 60% of all missing people in Delhi were women. Now, that's not just a random statistic. It points to a serious pattern of vulnerability, especially when you factor in the threat of human trafficking. And here is maybe the most sobering fact of all. That number, 54 people a day, it wasn't some new, shocking spike. Actually, if you can believe it, it's a little lower than the average for the last 5 years. So the big takeaway here? This wasn't some new crisis that suddenly went viral. It was a chronic, ongoing crisis that just finally got noticed. And if we zoom out to the national level, the context gets even starker. This chart shows the crime rate for several violent crimes across India. Look at kidnapping. The rate is double that of rape and a staggering 4 times the rate of murder. It just shows you that abduction, which is a primary tool for traffickers, is a distressingly common crime all across the country. But these numbers, as shocking as they are, they don't tell the whole story. They can't. To truly understand this issue, we have to listen to the voices of the people who have actually lived it. What happens after someone is found? This quote from a survivor is, well, it's just incredibly powerful. She explains that even when you come back, the nightmare isn't over. Instead of getting support, survivors are often hit with this intense judgment and suspicion from their own communities. Their trauma just gets buried under all this stigma. So you can see, the challenges they face feel like this impossible uphill battle. It's not just one thing. They're dealing with stigma, getting backlash from family, and often getting insensitive treatment from the very systems that are supposed to protect them. It's a pattern of being re-victimized that makes it incredibly hard to recover and rebuild a life. And this all leads to a really critical question. India has laws on the books to fight trafficking, so why are survivors still going through all of this? Let's take a look at the gap between the official policy and what's actually happening on the ground. On paper, the government stance looks tough. There's a new legal code, the BNS, and it lays out some really severe punishments for traffickers. It specifically goes after organized crime and jacks up the penalties for trafficking kids. The whole legal framework is designed to be a powerful deterrent. But in practice, the reality can be just devastatingly different. As the president of one anti-trafficking organization explains it, a survivor's first contact with the justice system can actually become another source of trauma, where she's made to feel like she's the one to blame for what happened to her. But, there are people on the ground working to bridge this gap, and the Mahila Mitra program is a fantastic example. It's this powerful initiative that trains survivors to become advocates who then work directly with police forces. They help sensitize officers and make sure that new victims are treated with the dignity they deserve. So this brings us to what's really the most important part of this whole story, the path forward. How do we move beyond just rescuing people and actually start empowering them for the long haul? Well, a key shift that has to happen is in how support programs are even designed in the first place. For way too long, the approach has been donor-centric, where solutions are basically imposed on survivors from the outside. The big call to action now is for a survivor-centric model, where survivors are treated as equal partners in designing the solutions that directly affect their own lives.
And that means being real. A real partnership isn't about everyone just agreeing all the time. As this NGO director so wisely points out, it's about creating a space where disagreements can happen respectfully. True collaboration means actually valuing a survivor's perspective, even when, and especially when, it challenges the old way of doing things.
And that leaves us with this final question. That viral headline from Delhi, it opened our eyes to the sheer scale of the problem. But the real work, the really hard work, lies in answering this. How do we build systems that don't just find the missing, but that also restore their dignity, their agency, and their power?